Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Get Outdoors PA webinar, Trail Events That Make Everyone Happy. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Nikki Tusher, and I'm the Director of Training in Get Outdoors PA with the Pennsylvania Recreation and Park Society. Here with me is my coworker Emily Gates, the Director of Strategic Partnerships, and she is running the technical side for us. Before we get started, I'd like to mention a few housekeeping points. This webinar is being recorded and all participants are muted. If you have questions or comments, please submit them in the chat box at the bottom left side of your screen. The speakers will either address them during the webinar or at the end. You will receive a link to the recorded webinar, a copy of the presentation slides, and some related documents following the webinar via email. This webinar has been approved for 0.1 CEU or 1 contact hour. The final presentation slide includes a link to the quiz and instructions. Make sure you take the quiz immediately following the presentation. A little background on who we are. Get Outdoors PA is a joint initiative among community and statewide partners that strives to connect citizens with outdoor recreation activities to increase their appreciation and active use of parks, forests, and public spaces while imparting a message of environmental stewardship and healthy living. Get Outdoors PA partners are committed to providing outdoor recreation and education events in the communities they serve. These events are designed to connect people to the outdoors through opportunities to learn and promote activities including hiking, fishing, hunting, camping, and biking. The Get Outdoors PA flagship partners are currently listed on your screen. In addition, Get Outdoors PA has 84 state park partners and 165 community partners, which are made up of park and recreation departments, land trusts, environmental education centers, and more. If you're interested in becoming a community partner, look for a link at the end of this presentation. We have a few learning objectives also before we get started. Throughout this webinar, participants will be able to determine what your needs are when introducing a new event. Participants will learn how to plan for multiple events throughout the year, how to build on past successes, how to run events to reach registration and revenue targets, how to engage new sponsors, how to build and retain a volunteer base, how to increase in operational efficiency over time, and how to successfully tap a variety of media outlets at all stages of planning. Now I'd like to introduce our speakers. We have Brian Greene, who joined the Delaware and Lehigh National Heritage Corridor as Trails Programs Manager in 2017. Trails programs are designed to aid the public, businesses, and municipalities in promoting and protecting trails. This results in an engaged public and towns that view trails as resources that directly benefit their quality of life, environment, and economy. Combining his background as an environmental monitoring scientist and passion for trails, Brian uses data to sustainably manage trails and improve the trail user experience. When not talking about trails, he prefers running or biking on them. We also have Laura Catalano, who is the Communication Director for the Schuylkill River's Greenways in Pottstown, where she has worked for the past 11 years. She is responsible for planning, promoting, and organizing events throughout the year that draw people to both the Schuylkill River and the Schuylkill River Trail while encouraging stewardship of the environment. Laura, Brian, if you'd like to say a quick hello.
Hi, this is Laura.
And hello, this is Brian Greene.
Fantastic. Laura and Brian, I'm going to turn it over to you to start the webinar.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We're going to be talking about some of our events to use as examples, and I hope that you find it helpful. I'm going to be talking about 3 events that we run here. One is our Pedal and Paddle event, which is a smaller event, but we run them every summer. We run 6 of them. They're limited to 15 people, and they consist of a bike ride on the Schuylkill River Trail and a return trip via kayak. The second event I'm going to talk about is called Ride for the River, and it is an annual bike ride. We've done it for 2 years now, and it is a 16 or 40-mile ride on the Schuylkill River Trail, and we partner with Sly Fox Brewery so that it begins and ends at the Sly Fox Can Jam Festival, which is a music festival. And the final event that I'm going to be talking about is our Schuylkill River Sojourn, which is a 7-day guided kayak trip down the river that we organize every spring, and that is now entering its 20th year. And Brian is going to tell you about the events that he's going to be talking about.
Yes, here at the DNL we have both indoor and outdoor events. So some of our indoor events are at our National Canal Museum or our dinner gala that we use as a fundraising event. But we also have trail events that we help out with, such as our Bike for the Bridge fundraiser. We have a half marathon on our trail that gets 1,000 people, and we've participated in the Delaware River and Lehigh River Sojourn. So we'll be telling examples from all these different types of events that we run.
Okay, but before we start talking about our events, we're going to tell you a little bit about things that could possibly go wrong. We both had experiences where, despite our best planning, things have gone wrong. So Brian, why don't you start?
I think a big important thing that when we talk about like outdoor events that have happened, if anyone who's managed them, knows that you can do everything right. You can have the course is great, the caterers are great, the gifts are amazing, but if you get a bad weather day, it can be really painful. We had a great event set up for our Bike for the Bridge one year, very successful in past years, but one year just happened to be like 38 degrees with rain, and that's just like probably about the worst weather you can have for biking. And then the picture from the very bottom left is a picture from when I worked on the Lehigh River Sojourn, where we were about ready to have 100 guests show up to this dock that we had planned to use and been to many times, and then we come to it right before people are going to show up there, and that is actually goose poop covering the whole entire dock. So sometimes you have to be able to scramble to take care of some messy situations.
Yes, I completely agree that weather and obviously goose poop would be a major problem. One of the problems that we ran into last year was when we were planning Ride for the River. We also ran into problems with the municipality. We made sure we contacted all the municipalities that the ride was going through. We let them know that we were going to have 300 cyclists coming through, and we had planned for a staggered start, and we had volunteers at intersections to help the cyclists cross. So we were planning for a really smooth start. And then during our announcements right before the ride start, there was a downpour, and we decided to let all the cyclists go at once. This was the first part of the ride, so close to 200 cyclists descended on the streets of West Pottsgrove Township. And within 5 minutes, the police chief arrived at our check-in tent, and he was not happy. He reamed us out. He told us he had known nothing about the event, and it turned out that we had actually alerted the wrong municipality, a different Pottsgrove, and it was true, he didn't know about it. But I will say that overall the event went well. Everything went well, and nobody even knew that happened except for our staff. So all's well that ends well, and the next year we were really careful to make sure that we alerted the municipalities. So my point basically is that no matter what happens, you're just going to have to roll with it, and things do turn out in the end. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about why people hold events, why you might want to hold events. And we hold events for multiple reasons, but the three main reasons are fundraising. If we want to decide we need to raise money, we have some fundraising events. We also have events that aren't fundraising events, and we call them friend-raising events, and they just really raise awareness to bring people to the trail or bring people to the river. Those are our main goals, and events do help us do that. They also help us meet organizational goals. Connecting people to the river is a main goal of ours, and the Schuylkill River Sojourn really helps us connect people to the river, and that is a great way for us to meet organizational goals. And then we're going to talk a little bit about who's leading, and who leads an event, and I think Brian, you have some good advice on that.
So a lot of times with these large events, they can't happen with one single person, and so you'll need volunteers, and oftentimes you'll have a committee with them. And I'm sure many of us have been in a committee of one sort or the other, and you meet on the first of the month of the year, and you said, okay, we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to do this other thing. And then you come back the next month and you sit down and nobody did those we things. So, we've kind of found out in our experience that if you can have a committee, you can have, a group working on it, but you need to have one clear leader, and you need to have one person who it's their task, their job, to make sure that all the various parts of these complicated events are moving forward. And because when you just leave it to the royal we, sometimes these things get lost in actually who will be the nuts and bolts of the person doing it.
Right. Yes, I totally agree with that. And we also have a worksheet. Brian, I think you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when we were doing this was part of this talk was part of a conference we gave at the Pennsylvania Greenways Summit. And so we created a worksheet that people can use at the very beginning. And we found that it's a lot easier if when you are planning an event or starting, the next version or the next year, that if you sit down in the very beginning and you write down like what your goals are, what you want to have happen, who's going to be involved, that if you do that in the very beginning, you're A, more likely to achieve those goals, and B, it makes the process go smoother. So as part of the email and the packet you'll get at the end, this form will be in there, and we hope that you find it useful for your planning for the document, for when you're planning an event.
Okay, so the worksheet is a great idea, but let's talk about where to begin. I mean, it all begins with an idea. Maybe you went to another event and that inspired you, or maybe you want to raise money, maybe you want to bring more people to your trail or your site. So you start with an idea, and whatever the reasons, once you've decided you're going to have an event, you need to take some first steps. And one of the first steps is deciding on your goals. And Brian, I think you had some good ideas about goals.
So like Laura mentioned, all these things generally start from an idea where somebody says, man, wouldn't this be great to have happen, this event? Could we host an event like this? And so it's really important to sit down in the beginning for the leaders and the committees on this event, to write down what their goals are before the planning event. And the best way that I've seen for us to be able to get at this is in the very beginning to say, if fill in the blank happens, then this event is a success, because you'll see people say, different things, and it tells you, what their motivations are and what they're hoping to get out of it. Your trail person might say, oh, I'd love to get lots of people out on the river and get them excited about the local rivers and local trails. Your finance manager might say, I'd like us to make $10,000. And your executive director said, well, I'd like for us to get a lot of press about this. And so although all those things are related, they actually, you would design your event slightly different if you wanted to maximize any one of those things. So just in the very beginning, getting everybody to say, hey, is this a fundraising event where we're trying to raise money? Or is this a friend-raising event? Or is this one of our programmatic events? What's the goal from it? It prevents those problems where you're 2 months in the planning, 3 months in the planning, or day of the event saying, well, I thought this was the goal, or I thought this is why we were doing it. So it's just setting out, if this happens, then we'll consider the event a success. Is a good step, first step.
Great. So once you've set your goals, you need to really take the next step, which is really start planning. So the first step to that is to decide when you're going to start planning. And I think the sooner, you really need to start sooner than you probably think you need to. A good rule of thumb for a brand new event, if it's a large event, you should start planning a year ahead. So for smaller events that are for small groups, allow 6 months if possible. Starting early allows you to get the word out sooner, and it gives you time to work out a lot of different details that we're going to get into. But one of the first things that I do, and that I'll be doing now at this time of the year, is I send out a save the date for all our major events in January. And it doesn't always have, people can't always register for those events. We don't always have all the details worked out. It just gets it on people's schedules so they know that it's happening. The second thing, or I guess one of the main things you need to do, is form a committee. Now, not all events need a committee. For our Pedal and Paddles, we don't use a committee because it's a small event. We don't really need a committee for that. But most events do benefit if you have a committee. And why form a committee? Because the committee members hopefully are going to share the work with you. They're also going to share the decision making. There's a ton of decisions to be made, whether it's like how far should we make this ride, when the date should be, what kind of swag you want to give out, all those things. There's a lot of decisions, and your committee will help you make it. It also allows partners and board members to be included and represented. So if you're partnering with somebody on this ride or on your event, then you can include them on your committee, and that way you know they're always involved. And who will be on your committee will be board members, other staff members, volunteers, and partners. Our Ride for the River Committee works really well with us having a Sly Fox Brewery partner, our board president, 2 staff members, and 2 other board members. So the next thing you really want to do is talk about your budget. Once you've formed a committee, I think one of the first things you want to do is look at how much this is going to cost and where your money is coming from. You might not have solid numbers. You probably won't, especially if it's a first-time event. But you should know kind of what your expenses will be, kind of get an idea, and also know where some of the money is coming from. Our Pedal and we have the 3 events I'm talking about have 3 very different funding structures. Our Pedal and Paddles are not a fundraiser. They're grant funded. They're limited to 15 people. The costs include paying outfitters, partners, staff, and permits, and we recoup some of those costs, but through the $40 per person fee, but not all of them because we do have grant to cover it. Ride for the River is a fundraiser. We make quite a bit of money off of that, but we have numerous costs that include porta potties, snacks, food, T-shirts, staff time, and we try to recoup all those costs through participant fees and sponsorships, and we are able to do that. Our Schuylkill River Sojourn is an enormous event. It's 7 days. We have 200 people participate. We have some grant funding, but we have a tremendous number of costs involved. There's this very expensive event to run, and we recoup those costs through participant fees and sponsorships. And I'll get into sponsorships a little bit later, but sponsorships have been an important way for us to make money on that event. Okay, and the next thing I think once you have your committee and you know how much you're going to spend, the next thing you really want to do is figure out some basic logistics. You want to figure out your date. That's going to be one of your first things. You know, when are you going to hold this? You want it not to be too close to other similar, if you're going to do a bike ride or a run, you want to check around the area, the calendars, and make sure it's not too close to other similar events. You might want to pair it with another event. Our Ride for the River, we pair with our Sly Fox Can Jam Music Festival, and so the date is set by Sly Fox, but you always want to make sure that the date works for whatever partners or outfitters you're working with. You also want to think about the number of people your event can handle or you hope will attend. This really is trickier than it sounds. You may have a venue with a specific capacity, and then you can only have maybe 150 people. Our Pedal and Paddles, we limit to 15 people because we provide kayaks and gear, and the smaller group is more manageable. Our Sojourn has a limit of 100 people per day for safety reasons, but we always push it to about 120 because it's such a popular event. But Ride for the River, we hoped our first year for 100 people, and we got 300. We've had the opposite happen. So figuring out numbers can be a little tricky. As far as there's other logistics go, if you're doing an outdoor event, you want to consider, what distance is, and will you offer multiple distances? And if you offer more than one distance for a ride or a run, you're going to make more people happy, but it does make things more complicated. So you don't want to have like 10 distances or even 5. We decided on 2 for Ride for the River. And then will you need volunteers? Small events like Pedal and Paddles, we don't need them, but big and complex events like Ride for the River, we need 45 volunteers. And you need to know that up front because that's going to affect your costs. And if you're going to have volunteers, you're going to have to start organizing that early. And a few more logistics. Will you work with partners or outfitters? For Pedal and Paddle, we actually do have two outfitters that we work with. That helps reduce staff time and improve safety. And if you need to find a partner or if you need to find an outfitter, you can usually ask bike shops or find out who runs other events in the area. Another thing to really think about right up front is if you need permits. If you're using a park, you probably do. But even if you don't need a permit, like if you're crossing roadways, you may need permission from the township. So these can take a while to get, and there is going to be a cost to them. So another thing to think about when you sit down in your planning stages is, do you want to add value to your event by partnering with somebody else? Our Pedal and Paddles, we decided to partner with More Latin Village, a historic site that people could ride to. And that added an educational value. They got a tour of the historic site in addition to riding their bikes and kayaking back. Ride for the River, we partnered with Sly Fox Brewery because it added entertainment value and the festival food was there, so it made actually for easier planning and a more enjoyable experience for the riders. And then I want to talk a little bit about sponsorships. Sponsorships help keep your finance manager happy, but then you have to keep your sponsors happy. So we've had a lot of success in paying for events with sponsorships. And it's a good thing to think about when you're first setting out your event, what kind of things you might be able to offer sponsors. T-shirts, banners, their name or logo on programs, signs, cue sheets. But we also offer things like speaking opportunities at the event. And if they give a certain amount, they can participate in the event. So when you're writing, the way to get sponsors, we find a good rule of thumb is to send out a sponsored letter a couple months before the event. Let them know in your sponsor letter why they should. Tell them a little bit about your event and let them know what it supports. And then spend about half the letter describing what the benefits are to them. And we also include a sheet that outlines sponsorship levels. And I believe that sheet will be sent to you. A sample sheet will be sent to you after this webinar. But remember, a good thing to keep in mind is that you should create levels higher than you think people are going to give, just because you never know. And it encourages even people who give at a lower level to give a little bit higher. And then even sponsors that give at the lowest level should have some benefits. Our best success with sponsors has been putting their logos and names on programs, banners, and T-shirts. We really improved our sponsorship giving at the Sojourn when we started giving out a program that had sponsors on it. And then also I want to talk a little bit about how you're going to promote your event. So creating a logo for a large annual event is a good idea. We like to put out printed flyers for Ride for the River. We place them along the trail in brochure racks and at businesses, and we also hand them out at other events. Social media and Facebook is a great way to promote your event, especially boosted Facebook posts. We found that was really successful for us. And if it's a trail event, we put signs right along the trail right before the event. And just keep in mind that the more ways you spread the word, the better. Email blasts are our best success. We have a pretty big email contact list, so we send out multiple emails about our events. We send out save the dates. We send out an email blast when registration opens, early bird pricing blasts, and reminders weekly in the last month. We also send out press releases and media alerts and event list. We try to list it on as many event websites and partner sites as we can. And then once you know how you're going to promote your event, or even actually before you start promoting it, you need to set up registration. And you need to ask yourself a few questions. Will you use an online registration system? Even if you're doing a small free event, we find that an online registration system makes it easier to keep track of who's coming, and gives you an idea of how many people will be there. Keep in mind that there is a cost to online registration systems. So which system you use will depend on what your event is. We use 3 different registration systems for 3 different events. We use Eventbrite for Pedal and Paddle, so you can use Eventbrite for free if you have a free event. Bike Reg we use for Ride for the River because it is a biking site and it's made for that. And we use Reg Online for the Schuylkill River Sojourn because it's very a complicated event, and that is a software that can handle it. But it is more expensive also. So you also have to think about when you'll open registration and if you will have early bird pricing. It is actually a good idea to have early bird pricing because it helps you promote your event and people will sign up earlier. And then when will you close your event, your registration? And will you allow people to register at the event? And if you can, if you have the capacity to do it, we find that's very successful, that you'll get maybe 30 more people who just want to register that day. But when you do an online registration system, there's a lot that can be included on the site, the T-shirt order, the category options, but also we do a request for donations and half-price membership opportunity that, you know what, we get like maybe 20, 25 people signing up for that, and that's just an extra way to get a little bit of extra money and to engage people in a different way. And another, and I'm going to hand it over to Brian now, but I just want to say that for me, in all the years I've been planning, the one thing that I would like you to take away is the idea that keep it simple. When you're planning an event and you're making decisions about, you know, do we want to have a multi-day event or a one-day event, go with the one-day event. You can always expand it at another time. And that goes for everything. You know, we can have snacks or a meal. We'll start with snacks if you can get away with it. And then later on, if you think you need more, you can add to it. Okay? Brian?
Great, Laura. Now we're going to continue talking about one of the most important parts of events is volunteers. And volunteers are really where the rubber meets the road. They are going to be your frontline heroes. They're the people who are going to interact with your guests and participants. And so they're a very critical part of your team. A lot of times people kind of think about volunteers as kind of like disposable, or, you know, they're free so they don't cost us anything. But they're really important. One of the key things that, you know, we've learned is that, say for example, for an event you decide, oh, we need 10 people, 10 volunteers at this event. It's important to go out and recruit 12. And so because you'll probably have maybe one person that will drop out because of something, and then, you know, having an extra one to be able to cycle in and out or move to a different place if something comes up, you know, to give your other volunteers a break is really important. And always the most important thing with volunteers is you don't want to waste their time. You know, they are giving you the most valuable thing that anybody has, which is they're donating their time to you and your organization. And if you keep these volunteers happy, then your guests will be happy, and these volunteers are more likely to come back and repeat at your event, and that's when they become super valuable. We've had some volunteers who've done all 8 years of our half marathon, and, you know, they know and are able to run the event better than some of our staff, and so those become really important and valuable people to have as part of your event team. So the volunteers, you know, if it's possible to hold a planning meeting beforehand to work out what are they going to be doing, that's a very key step. You know, at the very minimum, you're going to hold that day of, you're going to meet all of them. So here I am at our Bike for the Bridge event going over with some of our volunteers what their tasks and roles are for the day. And there needs to be an on-site coordinator for the day of the event. So even if you have somebody who's been planning the event and they're not going to be there, they need the volunteers and everyone, the staff needs to know, okay, who is the person in charge on site at the event, so if something comes up, that's the person that they can go to. And then they need to have, you know, clear tasks and clear roles, because if they don't really know what they're doing, then they're not going to be able to perform well. Of course, you know, the devil is in the detail with any of these events, especially these outdoor events. You know, sign-ups, waivers, the forms, are they filling these out online, or are they going to have to fill them out in person? You need to have signs and banners for your event, not only along the course if it's a race or something, but tell them where to park, how to get there, how to get from the parking to where the race starts or where the event is. So maps are an important part of this, showing people where the course goes, where they can get water, where they can park their car. And then these events are a great opportunity to get your name in front of some people who might not be that familiar with the organization. So having member sign-ups, information about the causes that you're promoting as an organization, you need to have all that ready out there. Swag, items that you are giving away is a pretty common thing at these events, and it's a nice way to kind of say thank you to your guests and participants. Generally we talk about it being, free in quotes. Nothing's really free. They're paying for it as part of the cost of their registration, or are there going to be an additional cost, to get a certain item in addition to just the base level registration. Lots of times you see T-shirts and wearables like hats or maybe like wristbands or things being used, and those are always little popular things that you can do. Put sponsors' logos on and get the promotion out there. But another thing that we're seeing more and more is that you can get unique custom items for your event. Our last Bike for the Bridge event, instead of doing a T-shirt, we made a special pint glass, and it was a really big hit with our users. And it also, we designed it in a way so that it could be reused. It didn't say the date on it, the year, or like that specific event. It just promoted our trail, which the people were biking on. And now we also sell these in our gift shop at our museum. And so we kind of designed it in a way that it's evergreen and can be used again. And I'm a big fan of doing these like unique custom items because I prefer doing them versus like T-shirts or things that have sizes, because then people are always like, oh, I ordered a medium but I want a small now, and it just kind of gets complicated where if you have a pint glass, it's one size fits all. Everybody got it, and most people were pretty happy with it. And another thing about the T-shirts is I'm willing that the majority of people on this phone call are probably not too far away from some place in their office that has the past event T-shirt pile. So every place I've worked at has had this pile. And what do you do with all these T-shirts that you have from the 2012 event? At some of the places I've worked, we've sold some of the past ones. Sometimes we'll give them away to volunteers. Another way to kind of get around this, like Laura showed you on some of the online registration places, that you can do a custom order for each person. So, it might be an additional cost, but they get to select that and they get to select their size. And so then, once registration is complete, exactly how many T-shirts or things you're ordering, and those are just going out to the people. It helps to have some extras made, for your volunteers or for people you want to give away, but then hopefully that reduces on this T-shirt pile. Food and drink. This is probably one of the most important aspects of any event. You don't want to let people go hungry. You can have a great, trail walk, dinner gala, museum opening, but if you don't have good food, or some people got food and other people didn't get food, people will complain about it. So this is definitely something that people will talk about. You want to try to accommodate as many people as possible. There's so many different things, from vegetarian, gluten-free, different types of diets. You can't cover them all, but you want to try to be as accommodating for many people as you can, and sometimes in the registration process you can get people to identify this. And then you want to make sure that you have plenty to drink, especially if you're doing these outdoor events like a bike race or a run. People need to stay hydrated. It's a safety issue. But then if you want to make your event really popular, have some beers there. Have something afterwards, for people to enjoy. That'll get people to be having a good time and want to hang out longer. Here's a picture from the Eastern Pennsylvania Greenways. conference we did, and we had an evening event at our National Canal Museum where we had a food truck come out. We had a local brewery donate some beers, and it was a great way to kind of get people out of the conference setting, outdoors, enjoying some food out at our park, and drinking some beers, and so it was a lot of fun. Same thing, entertainment, just how Laura gave a great example of how their Ride for the River partnered with the Cam Jam, which had music and a festival. You can take some of your normal programmatic events and make them extra special by incorporating entertainment in them. People like to have fun. We have a mule-drawn canal boat here at the National Canal Museum that people can go out on when the museum is open. But at certain times of the year, we'll run dinner cruises or evening cruises that have special themes. They might have a music theme or a food theme or like a history theme. And as you can see from this photo, our 2017 ones, every single one of them sold out. They were very popular. We worked with local artists. We made them unique events, and they were very successful. So, it's always good as an event planner when you can put things up and at the end of the year you look out and it says sold out, sold out, sold out, sold out. Your facilities where you're holding the event is a really important aspect, and you want to make sure that you check out the facilities and venue beforehand. There's nothing worse than doing something and it's the first time you go to this facility and they don't have something that you thought they had or they said they would have. So going there and checking out beforehand is almost mandatory. You want to see, does it have power? Does it have water? Does it have cover from the weather? Is it going to be big enough? Can you rearrange things to fit your group? And then also accessibility. Will your guests be able to easily access it? Where's the parking for it? And will it be big enough to hold your event? And then another part about the accessibility is for thinking about your staff and the setup. Are you going to be able to drive in with your vehicles, unload all the gear, or you're going to have to park and then carry the gear somewhere? So the accessibility just from the functional port, how can you get stuff to and out of it, is really important. Pre-event, you want to try to give the people who have registered as much information as they can. With a lot of these online registration forms, you contact their email, so you can send them reminder emails with event info before it, answering the questions, where is it going to be at, with a link to an online map, what time it is, what do you expect, what do we need them to be able to bring. So this, and then contact info. So if they have a question or something goes up, or there's a weather, related portion of it, that they can, know who to email or who to call. And so you're trying to give them as much information so that they can prep as much beforehand. If you can tell somebody, to bring a water bottle or bring shoes, then it prevents you from having that one person be there and not show up with the gear that they need, and then they have a bad day. So now you'll still get people that will show up unprepared, and it doesn't matter how many emails you send, not everyone's going to read it, but you're at least trying to be proactive and do everything that you can do. Day of the event. You put it's a big celebration. This is your chance, to really shine. Hopefully, the majority of the work is done before the day of the event. Then it's all about executing that plan that you had. So, having a clear chain of command, being able to go with the flow and be able to handle the obstacles, that come up. This is a photo from the Lehigh River Sojourn, and it's one of my favorite photos because got published in the newspaper, because here I am right here next to this green arrow that you can see. Somebody's coming up and telling me the third or fourth problem of that morning that I'm sitting there trying to figure out in my head, how am I going to be able to deal with this? What's going to go on? It's throwing a wrench in all these plans we made. But the key part about this photo that I really like is that everybody else around me, they're excited to get on the river and have a great day, and they don't know that's going on. And so, I'd say you want to be like a duck. If you look at a duck on a lake, it looks really calm and it's just sitting there bobbing along in the waves. But if you saw it underwater, you see its feet are kicking 1,000,000 miles an hour, trying to just stay in one place. And so, if you smile and you have a fun time, your guests are going to have a fun time. And the majority of them, they won't even realize that if something is amiss because they weren't part of the planning. They don't know. After the event is a really critical time. You just had this great event that people are smiling. It was a beautiful day. They were out on your place. This is your moment for you to really capture them. They have these warm, fuzzy feelings about your organization and about the event. So having something pre-planned, a follow-up engagement or something that they can do right then. Maybe it's a follow-up email asking them to become a member or make a donation. Maybe it's to sign a petition to help support your cause or your trail or your event in the future years. You have to have that pre-planned. It's not something you think of after the event. You already have it planned and ready to go. And another thing that you have to have planned is, have a wrap-up meeting so that when the event's not over until you've packed up all the gear, put everything away, and you've held a wrap-up meeting with your committee to say, what worked? Let's record the metrics, the successes. What things could we do better, next year? Because a lot of times, I know I've been personally have come to an organization and been new, and they've tasked me to take charge of an event, and they'll say, well, Johnny just did it, last year, and well, Johnny's not here anymore, and so and Johnny didn't write anything down, so how much happier you would be if you were planning an event, if when you started that event, somebody hands you a playbook and said, this is what we did, last year, and something that worked out, really well, and then you can update it and change it. Something that I've recently starting to do is all my events, I've created internal websites for our staff and volunteers where it has all the information on a web page so that we can people can access it from anywhere. And then what I do for the next year is I just copy that web page and start a new one for the New Year's event and then start editing it from there. And that's been something that it's worked out. It's been pretty successful for me. So events are a lot of work. They take a lot of time, they take a lot of energy, they take a lot of money to pull off, but they can really benefit your organization. They can really get your name out there. They're great PR. They're a great way to engage with your core base of users, but also to hopefully introduce your organization to other users. And you can also, these events can help serve your community. They can give back. They can raise funds. They can do, cleanups or trail work. And so they are, a great resource for the local community. And most importantly, they can be fun and productive. Yes, it's a lot of work for the people who are putting them on, but it makes it all worthwhile when you have these smiling people out there enjoying it, feeling like they're giving back, making a difference, and getting to enjoy things that you really enjoy. So that's the end of our presentation, and I think now we'll leave it open for questions or comments that you can write in through the chat.
Thank you, Laura and Brian. That was fabulous information. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to jot them in the chat box to the bottom left side of your screen. In the meantime, we'll give people a few minutes to ask any questions, but again, we want to thank Laura and Brian for speaking with us and the wonderful information, and thank all of you for taking the time out of your schedules to join us. You should receive an email by Friday afternoon with the presentation slides, the complete recorded webinar, and any other documents that Laura and Brian have mentioned during the presentation. Please don't forget that individuals who wish to obtain the continuing education credits must complete the quiz. The last slide, when we flip to it, will have a link to SurveyMonkey. Please complete the quiz immediately following the webinar. And if you get 4 out of 5 questions right, we will send a letter of completion with the CEUs detailed on them. Another note, if you're interested in becoming a Get Outdoors PA partner, there's a link in the webinar that can take you to the Get Outdoors PA website. And if you have any questions, you can always call the PRPS office and ask for Nikki Tusher, the Director of Training in Get Outdoors PA. And I do see one question. Any tips on selecting a creative name for your event? That's a great question, Christopher.
This is Laura, and I will say that we sometimes struggle with that. I think some of our events, like our Pedal and Paddle, that was obvious. Ride for the River, I think we came up with the help of actually a designer who has a design firm who is on our committee, and that same person also came up with a name for a brewery tour that we're running that's called Heritage and Hops. So I think actually a good idea might be to, if you can't come up with something good yourself, would be to maybe hire somebody, or if you have somebody that you work with, a designer that you work with, could try to get some ideas from them.
That's a good point, Laura. But you're not the only one. Everybody struggles with the names for it. And so my only suggestion, or things that I've kind of learned, is in the very beginning, you want to think about, especially, is this going to be a long-term event that's going to continue to happen? So is this a name you're going to use again and again? And if so, then you want to spend a lot of time in trying to find the right one. I'll give you an example. So we started about 4 years ago doing a Bike for the Bridge, a fundraiser to help support building a bridge that's going to cost over $4 million on our trail in Jim Thorpe that's going to get completed this year. And so when it is completed in 2018, we'd like to continue the fundraiser, but it's not going to be Bike for the Bridge because that bridge got built. And so, we're thinking about, do we transition the name into something else so it's Bike for the Trail, or something to that can continue to show people that we are supporting it. But as an example of when we thought about that event originally, we weren't thinking about the whole long-term nature that this thing would go on for years after the bridge was built.
Fantastic. Thank you both. That was great information. Again, I don't see any more questions at this point in time. However, when we send the slides out, there is contact information for both Laura and Brian, and I'm sure you can reach out to them at your convenience. We will leave the last slide up for about 2 or 3 minutes so you can access information to the SurveyMonkey quiz, and also to the community partner website on the Get Outdoors PA website. We thank you all and have a great day.